London Real, one of the coolest up-and-coming podcasts.
Summer has arrived in London, and let me tell you, we cherish it. We don't get many sunny days here, so when we do, we take full advantage of them. Wimbledon is cracking, and the whole British summer scene is happening. I'm telling you, when it's sunny out, it's the best city in the world. This week, we have Immortal Technique on the show. If you don't know who he is, he started off as a battle rapper back in New York City back in the day, and he's become not only a great hip-hop artist, but also an outspoken person when it comes to everything from U.S. foreign policy abroad, to genetically modified foods, to prison reform, hemp reform, you name it. Immortal has an opinion about it, and he is just a fascinating gentleman to listen to. He's articulate. He is a student of history. He was dropping historical dates and moments on me and integrating that into his theories on the world and on the way we treat each other on this planet. Everything from Native Americans to what's the whole concept of sovereignty. And he did it all in such a powerful manner. He's quite a serious individual. He reminds me of New York City, really. You know, you see a certain kind of guy in New York that I personally just don't see in London. You see that guy who's just a little bit scary. And, you know, Immortal, he has that presence about him. You know, he's had a very serious past. He did some prison time when he was young, and I know that changes a man, and it changed him, I believe. And he's found a way to express himself through his hip-hop, and he's a fantastic addition to the London Real catalog. You know, I put him right up there with guests like Graham Hancock, Jacques Fresco, Dorian Yates, as far as someone to tell a story and to give you their perspective. You know, you probably wouldn't necessarily bump into Immortal in your normal day-to-day. So I hope we can bring you to him, and I really hope you enjoy. He talks about my favorite hip-hop artist, Ice-T, because he was in a movie called The Art of Rap with Ice, which was a documentary all about the hip-hop movement. And you know, Ice only chose a finite number of artists to be in that movie, and Immortal was one of them. And he was dropping New Jack City lyrics on the streets of New York. It's got to be one of my all-time favorite songs. And I talk about a little bit of my history with Ice-T and how I used to listen to him nonstop when I was at MIT. And I hit Immortal with one question that I think kind of stumped him a bit and made him think. So you'll have to tune in and check that out. But it was a real pleasure having him on. You know, he did not have to do this. It was his day off in between a crazy concert tour that took him to Ireland, England. He was going on to Denmark, I think. And you know, he took time out of his day to come to London Real Studios. So I just wanted to thank Immortal for that, and thank Sully Breaks for co-piloting with me. It was nice having someone you know, that has a spoken word take on things, and Sully's very British, so it was nice to have that contrast as well. So I hope you enjoy Immortal, and it's one of my favorite episodes. As you know, myself, also known as B Rose, has been bulletproofed. Yes, I am drinking the bulletproof coffee every morning, and it's become part of my diet, part of my lifestyle, I guess part of me. A lot of you guys are trying the bulletproof out. Everyone's asking me where to get it, and I'm just excited people are trying something new. You know, I had a friend of mine come over the other day, and I made him a cup, which is quite a ritual. You know, you got to get the AeroPress out, you got to get the butter out, the MCT oil, and he saw me making it, and he saw that butter and the oil, and he's just like, what the fuck am I about to drink? And then I blended that up, and it looked like a latte, and he drank it, and he was just like, I love it, I'm doing this from now on. So it's a fantastic way to get an intermittent fast during the day, so you don't eat in the morning, and I think we could all use a little bit of fasting. So please check that out. If you want that coffee and you're coming at me from the US, there's a link below. I think it's bit.ly, which is Bulletproof USA. Go to Dave's upgraded self-site. You can buy the Bulletproof, you can get the MCT oil. He's also got some chocolate powder that he just sent me, which I'm about to try out and make my coffee a little chocolate in the morning. So check that out, and thanks to Dave and the Bulletproof guys for supporting the show. It is the official drink of London Real. And if you are in the UK or Europe and you want to pick up that Bulletproof or the MCT oil or anything, then go to Xbrain. X-Brain gets you this stuff within like 2 days. I've had a bunch of guys use it recently, and boom, it's on their doorstep. No customs, no currency, no problem. They also stock all the Onnit products, including Alpha Brain. I take 1 a day, 2 on podcast days, and 3 whenever I see Max Kaiser. So check out X-Brain for all that stuff. They got the Shroom Tech Sport, and they're gonna have their own products coming soon as well. I'm very excited at what they're gonna cook up. Very cool guys there, and like I said, they stock all the BP stuff. So if you're in London, UK, Europe, just hit up X-Brain, get that coffee, ship it in, try it. I guarantee in 2 or 3 weeks, you're gonna drop probably 5-10 pounds, and you're just gonna, that brain's gonna be working in the morning. And I popped that Alpha right after I drank the coffee. Woo! It's on like Donkey Kong in the morning, man. I can edit episodes, I can do everything. So it's all good, thanks to the guys at X-Brain. And our final sponsor are the cats at Squarespace. Now, if you don't know Squarespace, it's an all-in-one, drag and drop, basically soup to nuts, start your own website. You can even reserve your URL there. You can get basically up and running without a deposit right away. You can build your site. And I'm telling you, everybody's converting to this. Melissa Sterry, the futurist, she's moved over to it. Colin Pyle, my co-host on Silicon Reel, has moved over to it. I've just put Silicon Reel on Squarespace, and I just uploaded the first episode on iTunes. This is our tech podcast called Silicon Reel. And Dre, our PR coordinator and our everything London Reel man, he showed me how to do it, and it was so easy. I mean, I'm usually FTP and files to here and there, and my GoDaddy server. Squarespace, it's like, boom, you got a podcast. Boom, you got a beautiful website. So check it out. I hate to put web developers out of jobs, but that's what I'm doing. And no matter what your business is, you can make it look hot with Squarespace. So check them out. You can go to squarespace.com/London Reel. If you want 10% off, you can use the code London7. And if you don't, then don't. So that's it. Thanks to those guys. Other than that, we've been doing this Silicon Reel thing. Jesus, it's fun as hell. I thought to myself last week, I'm like, Brian, what the hell are you doing, man? You got London Reel to put on, but it's like the perfect storm. It was like the right place at the right time. We got Bryce Keane in the house, one of the 3 beards here on the Silicon Roundabout. We got Colin Pyle, who's pumped, which was my former guest, the guy that rode his motorcycle across China. By the way, I watched that on his DVDs, loved it. You got to get it on Amazon, it's pretty awesome. And we just interviewed a 23-year-old kid whose net worth is probably 9 figures yesterday, and he was such a cool kid. Moved from Limerick, Ireland to Silicon Valley when he was 17 or 18, and the coolest, nicest kid. He left on a Barclay bike down the street. You would never know the difference between him and someone else. Maybe there is no difference, but he was just so pumped up with ideas. Very smart kid, learned to program when he was young. So that's going to be on Silicon Reel. If you want to check that out, it's siliconreel.com, on iTunes, Silicon Reel, you name it, man. So I think it's going to inject a lot of positive energy in the show, and it's just fun being around all these tech guys, man. They love their jobs. Do you love your job? So it's fun being around people that are that excited. And that's it, kids. If you want to be a part of the scene, if you want to be a part of London Reel, we'd love to have you. Send me an email at info@londonreel.tv. Volunteer your services. We can use you all across the world. We can use you for blogs, for helping us promote on Twitter, you name it. It's a lot of fun. And if you want to check us out, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. If you're listening to us, please subscribe on iTunes and check out Silicon Reel too. I think it's a lot of fun. You might think you have nothing to do with tech people, but they're just like you and me. They're just crazier and pretty inspiring too. So there you go, right behind me, the beautiful Silicon Roundabout. And now I give you Immortal Technique, motherfuckers. Peace.
Okay, cool. This is London Reel. I am Brian Rose. My co-pilot today is Mr. Sully Breaks, who is a spoken word artist who's racked up almost 6 million views on YouTube with your spoken word videos such as Why I Hate School But Love Education, The American Dream. Your latest one is I Will Not Let an Exam Result
Decide My Fate.
Decide My Fate.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you want to see more about Sully, he was a guest on our show about 3 months ago. It's called Change Through Verse. Definitely check him out there. He's been on the Washington, Huffington Post. He's spoken at over 100 universities?
Yeah.
That's a lot. Cool. And our guest today is Immortal Technique. He is an American rapper and an urban activist. I think you're best known for your aggressive style early on as a battle rapper, and then for independently releasing and distributing your very first album, Revolutionary Volume 1. You're also known for your activity with prison reform, hemp law reform, the Green Light Project, building orphanages in Afghanistan. Welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much for having me, man.
Cool, that's a real pleasure. This is the second time you've been here, I think, in like a year, because I know we missed you on the first time we were touring. And I saw you tweeted out that you might get a crib in London, and I was just wondering, why does the UK love you so much, and why do you love the UK?
Well, first of all, what's interesting about being here is that anyone who's ever lived in America knows that everything that we eat there is chock full of high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
And it makes things just taste disgusting. And I'm not saying that British food doesn't suck, because it does. But I'm just saying that when you have the influx of so many other places that have been colonized by Britain, you have Caribbean food, which is delicious here. You have West Indian cuisine. You have, Indian food. You have Middle Eastern cuisine. And the ingredients just taste more fresh. I mean, even the junk food tastes better than, it's to that degree. I'm not saying that I don't like to stay. I love it here. It's just, organic food is very expensive. Not that, living in London isn't more expensive. I constantly, when my friends is here, I keep telling them, just whatever you spending, just multiply times 1.55, and then you see how much money you're really spending on that. But at the same time, I can say that to me, I think what the fans and what the supporters, I should say, really appreciate is the honest talk from me. The reality that I'm not going to change. I'm not going to allow a corporation to dictate what I say. That no matter where I am, I always speak my mind. That I'm definitely opposed to a lot of the interventionism that the U.S. pulls Britain into, and I think that there's a lot of resentment that's built up over the years where people are asking themselves, okay, well, why are we sending our boys out there to die in some other country out here? Because we're not experiencing that to the same degree, and then we can sensationalize, a small amount of attacks, which, if we're keeping score, are way less people than we've killed overseas. So at some point, I think people want to ask themselves critical questions about what their government's involved in. I facilitate an open discussion like that through my music and through the meet and greets that I do, through the public works, whether it's talking to endangered or at-risk youth, people that are in danger of losing their homes, people that are in danger of spending the rest of life in prison. I think that speaks volumes, and I've always connected with the people here. I've come in here since 2004. It's been almost 9 years since I've just been coming back and forth from here, and every single time I think I've ever been here, it's always been a crazy sold out show. I mean, if they're really the best markets for me in the world, would probably be New York, because they love me so much, Los Angeles, home away from home, Sydney, insane, and probably London. I'd like to add a couple of more to that whole lunatic racket, but not to say that other cities like, maybe a Chicago or a Miami aren't just bananas, or Melbourne or something like that. Yeah, they are. But the other ones, I could easily do like 2,500 people in each one of those cities without a problem. And for an independent artist that doesn't have a major label backing, and we're doing tour support or spending, thousands of dollars for promotional venues, then it's a blessing.
Do you have a label? I know you started off without a label.
Yeah, I originally had no label, and it was just me, kind of hand-to-hand CD and doing yourself stuff in the street, and with a box. Just run up on niggas with a box. I got a box. Like, yo, you gonna buy a CD, man? I said it in the DVD, The Revolution of Immortal Technique, directed by my friend Carrie Stewart. I told him, back in the day, I used to just battle people, and if I won, they had to buy my record. That's how it was. And now, usually, even if I never really lost per se, but even when it was debatable, the person would be like, wow, I respect you. Like, I'll buy your record. Was it $10? God, man. So I earned my respect in that fashion. But I think, I met a friend of the family who had a label that was, I wouldn't say, it wasn't defunct. It was just, it was something that wasn't really being utilized as much as one release basically on it. So when I came along, I said, yo, maybe this person, a friend of the family, educated me to how the music industry worked, and it was an incredible experience for me. And the people at Viper Records, especially my old friend John, were real important in terms of educating me about how to navigate that shark pond that is the recording industry. So being that I found Viper Records to be a place where I could, do whatever I wanted, I came on, earned a spot as vice president, do all my work, and then eventually became president. So now, I run a show, so to speak, to some degree. And when we talk about specific actions and specific things that I want to do with the label, they're going to get done. If I want it to happen, it's going to happen. If I don't want it to happen, you're not going to see it on Viper Records. So.
I mean, in terms of that issue, there's like kind of an ongoing debate in hip hop at the moment about the utility of record labels. Do you think, considering the success of artists that are emerging, do you think a record label is actually necessary for an artist at the moment, right now, with the invention of social media and all that kind of stuff? Do you think so?
Well, that's a good question. People continuously come up to me and they say, what are they good for? They're all dinosaurs now. I just want to remind the public what a record deal is. Essentially, my brother, it's a loan with horrible interest rates. Let's say y'all get a loan from the bank. You pay back the loan, you buy a house with the money. At the end of the day, that's your house. People can't tell you nothing about that house. They can't tell you what to do. They should be able to tell you what to do. Who you can marry, who you can invite over, what kind of food you can serve, what your religion is. You want to hang whatever flag you want to. That's your house, motherfucker. You can't tell me nothing. But in this label scenario, like I said, they get a certain amount of money to give you for a budget, and that's where the idea where people say, I got $1 million deal. Yeah, well, $350,000 of that goes to press up CDs, at 3.5 a pop. So you got 100,000 CDs. They already bled half your budget on that. Where's the rest of your money? It's not like you're balling out of control. I think that is the sort of misnomer of the success story, or the idea that automatically anybody that goes to the majors is guaranteed that sort of elevated amount of recognition. And I think what people don't realize is that even when they pay that money back, the intellectual property doesn't belong to them. They're not the owner of the masters. They don't own the publishing. All of that gets pushed to the side. Now, in terms of a 360 deal and how that works now was something that the record label wanted to do in order to kind of change the image of how they do business and say, we're in it with you, buddy. You know what I mean? But that half is coming out, all the expenses is still coming out of the half that you have. So it don't matter if it was that or before. It's like when you do, it's like when you're doing, cooking the books for something. They're almost embezzling more money than ever. And I look at it and I'm just like, this doesn't address the issues that the artists have about ownership of their rights and ownership of their music and ownership of their artistry any more than their classical record deal did. So it's not like it's much of an improvement for me. Now they just want a piece of your shows and your merchandise, which, did you help me print that shirt? No, then what the fuck are you asking me for a cut for it? It's just extortion to me. So I've always seen the traditional label, like when I first was a young man, I was like, oh man, I want to get signed. But then when I saw what it actually means to be signed, it's a whole different story.
Is anyone doing it right? You look at someone like Jay-Z who, started off selling tapes in the back of his car, and now he's got a major label. Do guys like that, treat their artists fair, or is there any labels out there that you're like?
I'm not signed. Right? I'm not signed to Jay. I don't know what his his procedure is, but I say this much: it's interesting to me to see that those individuals are the exception to the rule. They're not the rule. You know what I mean? Even if there is an artist who gets treated somewhat fairly, it really saddens me that the exploitation of a lot of these artists are now done not by the quintessential evil, culturally disconnected white executive that went to like a business school. No, now you're just a disconnected black executive that is prostituting and pimping your own people into slavery. So it's like, are you any better? Like, is that what we have to do? Is that where hip hop is right now, to the point where we learned so much about it that people haven't had the same intense drive to go forward and say we should make this entire business model an independent music business model so that we can actually have the ability to continue to own our artistry and then to invest those funds into things that make sense for us and for all people. I've seen hip hop do some wonderful things in the world. I was down in Colombia, and they were using it to get kids off drugs. And I don't mean like heroin or cocaine. They were using it to get people off sniffing markers and sniffing glue because they was dying of hunger, you know what I mean? So they were like, yo, come in, we got a hip hop program, a free lunch, you know what I mean? And the kids would come in, and before you knew it, they weren't sniffing glue anymore. They were learning to play the drums. They were learning to program a old MPC or something, but they were understanding the rhythm of it. They were making their own beats. I mean, come on, man, music is a part of life. That's something that ennobles people. I mean, it can also be used to pacify and placate people as well. But I think that, you know, overall, without that experience, I think you lose something as a human being.
You put your stuff up online for free, right? The last album.
Oh yeah, a lot of the stuff that I have for free. I mean, I always tell people, look, I can't stop you from stealing it. You know, that's just ridiculous. I remember people, the Metallica nigga went nuts.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're gonna steal it. And everyone was like, yo, dude, shut up, man. You sound like a tired old man complaining about, like, you're boxing the wind. You know what, dude? You know, you're whipping the ocean. What are you gonna achieve by doing that? People are still gonna steal the music, but at the same time, they have to have an incentive to really connect with the artist instead of just having one or two songs that are, you know, marketed to radio, and then you have to go and buy the whole album to realize those are the only two songs that you like and everything else is filler. So I mean, that's what the experience of the quote unquote golden age was on the backside of it. But I mean, I don't know, when I look at stuff like that and I say to myself, where are we now as opposed to then, it brings up, you know, some pretty interesting comparisons. The business of the golden age of hip hop wasn't really that great. You know, people were getting raped for deals left and right. I had the good fortune to be friends with a lot of people like Lord Jamar from Brand Nubian, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, Q-Tip, KRS-One, Chuck D, when I first came in the game and I was first doing it independently and I had a very political angle. You know, these people were actually really helpful in my career, Ice-T then eventually, and people that would come out and they would say, yo, you know, let me break it down. This is what I was getting paid for an album back then. You know, I had a #1 hit and, you know, I'm on my mother's couch. Like, that's crazy. I can't even understand that. Why? And then you realize that, you know, these people who are out there talking about getting money through rap. You know, I don't care if you want to rhyme about what you want to rhyme about, but just don't lie to the kids. Don't tell them that's how you're a millionaire. Why don't you tell them the truth? Why don't you tell them that you got $100,000 to $200,000 as an upfront money from the label, none of which you ever saw on the back end. So what you did was you invested in a laundromat, you own a Waffle House or some shit. You know, you invested in the real business. Those are the people that have actually made money. You know, you see an individual, even a guy like 50 Cent with the, where the fuck would he be without the vitamin water deal? You know, $150 million poorer. So, I mean, that definitely put him on the map in terms of his business acumen and let people know, okay, you know, this is something that we have to take seriously. If we're going to be hip hop, then we can't just be irresponsible niggas that get high and then rock a mic and then go home and leave the paperwork to somebody else. No, we have to say, okay, we have to put on two hats, the performer hat, and we got to have the business cap on to say, all right, cool, well, who's going to own the rights to this? You know, who's going to own the rights to that? How are we going to, you know, make sure that everybody who participated in making the album gets paid in some way, shape, or form? And how are we going to reinvest some of this money so that the next dollar that comes out of our hand doesn't go to somebody outside of our community that don't give a fuck about us? Shouldn't it go to somebody within the community that we can help to rebuild our own hood instead of expecting somebody else to make it better? Because every time somebody gentrifies a community, whether it's in London or it's in New York, they don't really do it for the benefit of the people. They're doing it for, you know, some greedy corporation that wants to take over, kick people out, pay them a few £1,000s for their flat, and then redevelop it and sell it for 1.4 or 5 million. There you go.
Yeah, you mentioned Ice-T, and I want to ask you about him.
Sure.
I've been a big fan of Ice-T since Colors came out, and the thing about Ice-T fans is you don't meet many of them because he never got radio play, as most people don't know, because he never put out clean versions of his songs. You know, so if you knew Ice, you knew him from maybe Colors or, you know, OG and all this stuff. But I was always one of the few people that would bring him up, and people would be like, "Oh, I know Cube, I know NWA, but I don't know Ice-T." And I once listened to Original Gangster for like 2 weeks straight. I was at MIT. It was my second year in '91, and for Christmas we have a break, a 6-week break period, and I decided I was going to paint a pentagram on the door of my fraternity room door, and there was like 2 guys that decided not to go home for Christmas. So I was in like this 50-room frat house. Nobody was around. It was spooky, and I was just playing OG, over and over again. And I knew about you on Rogan, and I knew from that. But when you appeared on Art of Rap, I think I might dropped something. It was in my hand because I was like, oh shit! And you were rapping the New Jack City lyrics, I think, with Ice.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering how that happened. Did you know Ice for a long time? And a lot of people didn't make the cut. Because I know he shot many hours of that film, but a lot of people didn't make the cut.
That freestyle was
Big
epic.
shout out to Paul Toogood and Alice, his wife. They were actually supposed to come to the show last night, but they were the producers of the movie as well as Ice. But basically, what had happened is I've met Ice-T a few times at like the Zulu Nation gatherings when Bambaataa brings everybody together, and he just heard me spit with a bunch of other people, and I actually did an interview for my documentary for the Revolution of Immortal Technique with him, and when we basically had a chance to break bread and talk for a minute, he was like, yo, I might be doing a documentary in the future, would you consider being a part of that? And I was like, yo, you don't have to ask me twice. Ice is the coolest brother in the world, man. I called him one day and I was like, hey brother, I'm putting together the legal aspect of this entire project. I got to get people to sign off on stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, cool, where you at? I'm like, I'm on 2-5 right now. So he pull up out of nowhere in his damn Lamborghini with his Coco.
Love his cars.
Hey, what's up? Jump out, sees me, where the format? Oh yeah, whatever. He don't even read it. He don't give a shit. He's that type of dude. He's so trusting with his peoples, because I think he knows I would never try to fuck him over or try to sell the footage to like a Pepsi commercial or some stupid shit like that. Real recognize real. So I always liked Ice. He always had real encouraging words for us young brothers to really digest about the music industry and about how much it's set up like a pimp prostitute relationship, which is something that he definitely since he always rapped about pimping and shit like that. So he definitely put that concept and almost built it up as a microcosm of that. So.
He always praises other artists and stuff. Even in his early work, he would always be shouting out all these other people. And I don't think he ever saw it as a competition. I think he was like, let's all raise ourselves together.
Well, he was getting paid, so he didn't give a fuck about nobody's opinion. I know Ice, man.
Did you read his book, his recent autobiography?
Parts of it, yeah.
Okay. It's pretty amazing because he was hustling on the side. He was making most of his money not from his music, I think, in the beginning. And he was just saying that, and then people were like, and he was always saying, look, those cars and those guns and those houses are mine in my videos. He's like, I don't rent those. And he's a fascinating guy. But that scene on the street where you're rapping the New Jack City lyric, and I think you dropped some lines from your front lines after that. Did that just
it's
happen?
actually my friend it appeared on an album we put out through Viper Records called The Liar and the Thief for my friend Diabolic. He got a new album coming out called Fighting Words on Viper Records, viperrecords.com. So it's and from what I've heard, it's really amazing work that he's putting together. So big shout out to them. But yeah, I did the verse for that, and basically, what was interesting about it was that we had a very organic feel. Like Ice just walk around the street, totally cool with people. If somebody gets out of line, he'll check them. And that's another thing that I learned from some of the elders, kind of navigating the social scenario that you thrust into when you're out there at the show. Yes, you can't be an asshole to your fans. I always tell people you can't have this old school, Louis the 16th attitude, like, ugh, yeah, whatever, like, get out of my face. No, because then the people will turn on you, in a heartbeat. And if you want to act like a gangster, then there are a lot of people that have come from the States that have come out here and think it's sweet in London, and they get their ass robbed or shot at or something like that, because they die, man. We're a bunch of London niggas. Yeah, all right, but they're just crazy, just like you. They're hungry just like you. Just because their money is worth more don't mean that they aren't poor or they aren't living in a project or a tenement or something, and they see you shining and you basically flaunting your wealth in their face, and they feel insulted by that. So I've always been the type of person to be humble enough to build with anybody. So I kind of circumvented that because I've become sort of protected and loved by the community everywhere I go, because I stand up for them when other people would turn their back on them. I stand up for people that have been the victims of police brutality, for people that are the victims of gang violence, when they should really be realizing that it doesn't matter what postcode they're from, that they don't really own that block either, and that all of their money is being pulled out of their hands. And no matter what they think it is, or no matter how they choose to develop their lives, what they need to understand is that if you out here hustling, or you out here doing some crazy shit in London, remember, there's a difference between a criminal and a gangster. Petty criminal steals from you. I mean, let's say y'all niggas get together somewhere out there in Edgware, Brixton, wherever y'all niggas is at, y'all rob the shit out of somebody. Yeah, you got a gag, you took something from somebody. That don't make you a gangster. You a criminal, petty criminal. The difference is that a criminal takes from you. A real gangster makes you take his money. You know, a gangster will come to you and say, hey, you know, what's up, man? How you doing? I heard you got a business, you know. Yeah, y'all good guys doing like 1.2 million pounds a year. It's pretty cool stuff. You're gonna sell me your business for 500,000 pounds right now. Oh, by the way, your daughter's on the phone. That's a gangster, my nigga. That's how people do. And they are global gangsters. Will say, yo, you know, you got a great country in Africa, but you're gonna sell me the rights to your diamond mining, or you're not gonna be the president in 2 years, and your entire family's gonna end up looking like Gaddafi. That's what it's gonna end up like. We're not gonna have no gold standard in Africa. You're gonna keep buying pounds and dollars until I fucking tell you you can't. Oh, you got a great country here in the Middle East. You know, you're gonna sell us our oil rights. Oh, you don't want to? Cool, we're gonna throw you out and install the Shah. That's some gangster shit. That's the most gangster niggas in the world. That's why I tell the brothers in the street, you confused. You got your role confused, my dude. You a criminal. You're not a gangster. Like that's something that resonates with people, I think, and that's always been something that I can honestly say that I've been able to get across in the music that I make, and that I've been able to tell, because it's a globally understood phenomenon. But like I said, yeah, people be coming out here thinking it's something, and then, you know, they get caught out there very, very quickly, you know. And I remind people, you can't just take your shoes off and throw them wherever you want in someone else's house. You got to be respectful of other people's stuff. So being that I always walk with that, you know, and my father always taught me there's a difference between demanding respect and commanding respect. So I try to command it by putting my best foot forward and showing respect to other people.
Yeah, I think that's a common misconception when a lot of artists come from overseas, because the perception of what you see of the UK is what you see on the TV screen, as opposed to what really goes on in a lot of urban per se environments. So I've heard a few incidents where a couple of rappers have come from overseas and got into altercations. Primarily, yeah.
Let's keep it.
Yeah, I'll keep it real. A lot of rappers, yeah. Primarily because they've adopted that mind state of what you're saying, rather than commanding the respect. They've demanded it based on the status they've held somewhere else. And I testify to what you're talking about, that I think a lot of people need to take that into consideration when they're migrating through different countries, and especially for artists of your caliber to acknowledge that. I mean, that's highly respectful, you know what I mean?
I mean, brother, if I go to Nigeria, I'm gonna want to talk to the OG in Nigeria. I'm not gonna go there acting like it's my country. Hey, I'm here, this is my shit. I'm the man in Harlem, so I must be the man here. Like, no, dude. Let me talk to whoever's been holding this down, bleeding for this turf or whatever the fuck it is. Let me talk to them. Let me see. Let me hear their struggle. Let me hear their story. If I ever ended up in Mogadishu, I mean, what you gonna do? Kidnap me? What the fuck would I do? Instead of doing that, you do a better job taking me on a tour so I could tell the people that I know how this whole thing started, with people dumping chemicals and nasty shit into the water out there, and the people going out there in ships and saying, no, we're going to take this boat over and we're not going to let you dump radioactive waste and medical equipment waste here off the shore of Somalia. See, that's the difference. That's why I would get love in a place like that. Now, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. You know, somebody's always hungry, and when a wolf is hungry, they don't give a fuck who you are. So it don't matter what country. You could be in Germany and you run into some niggas that's starving in the street. They gonna take everything you got. It don't matter. You know, Romania, Albania. Don't fuck with them weird places. Don't fuck around down there. Yo.
Is the gangster you mentioned, is that the U.S. government or the UK government, or is it not that simple?
I mean, in some ways, yes, and in some ways, there's a responsibility that the people actually have for sponsoring that government, and it's also interesting because it leads me back to, you mentioned earlier in the program, talking about Joe Rogan. It's interesting because when I see a lot of comedians, they say that comedy comes from pain and from inner struggle, and when I see that, I'll see people like George Carlin that will come out, and God rest his soul, he was out there telling people the truth about the lack of choice that they really have. He goes, in this so-called free Western society, you have the illusion of choice. Your real choice is Pepsi and Coke. That's your choice. Your choice is Frosted Flakes or Corn Flakes. That's it.
Or Democrat, Republican.
But in other words, what he's saying is the major choices. Like, for example, if this was a representative democracy, and then people as a whole, collectively, the way they vote for a prime minister would have to say, all right, we're all going to get together and vote if we're going to send British troops into Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else in the world. And I guarantee you they don't want to do that. Do you know why? Because they would get a collective response from the people that says, no, this is ridiculous. We're not going to waste any money. We're not going to pay mercenary contracting firms. We're not going to pay your arms dealer friends. I don't give a fuck who the people are in parliament that want this. We're not going to pay your arms dealer friends. We're not going to pay those people that are outsourcing every aspect of this economy, when you turn around and you claim that you don't have money for school programs, you don't have money for anything, then what kind of advancement are you going to have for the people in the future? Instead, what did you do with that? You gave it to your friends that were giving you then kickbacks to run for office. I mean, if anybody else was doing that who wasn't involved in government, they'd be in prison. They'd be in jail for racketeering or some shit like that. But I think that in this particular case, yes, the government does act like a gangster in many occasions. They'll tell people, so I don't like you. You're not good for my business. I'm not making enough money off the situation that you've set up in your government. So I want that to change. And then it becomes, what can I do to make that change? Do I have to present you as something else? Because it's like, oh, well, you're an evil dictator. Well, wow, dude, when you point your finger, you got three fingers pointing at you. You employ plenty of evil dictators. Matter of fact, you've kept evil dictators in power for hundreds and hundreds. I mean, let's not go crazy, but for hundreds of years, there's always been evil dictators. And empires are willing to do business with them. Why? Because they create, quote unquote, stability in the region by brutally repressing any sort of revolt that would lead to better working conditions, that would involve paying people slightly more, which would be a negligible amount to somebody who's already a billionaire. But they're playing a video game for adults, like a goddamn casino with imaginary money that doesn't really exist. What do you need? What's all the $1 billion in the world for if we're losing as a human race?
I think they're keeping score, some of these rich guys. They just want to know they have a billion more than the next guy. I've seen guys do it in hedge funds, friends of mine in New York, and I'm like, dude, what's the difference between 20 million and 120 million and 240 million?
Yeah, I think
are you
those
happy?
guys,
Are your kids okay? You're doing something in your community? Then I don't know.
It makes you wonder. I mean, what the hell? What are you overcompensating for being hung like a mouse? I mean, is that what's going on? Did you need a giant fucking yacht or a car? It's just pathetic. You're not happy in life. Somebody told me that. Actually, when I first got to Viper Records, it's one of the first things people told me. They said, listen, if you're not happy, you're not successful. Because success is intertwined with happiness. If you're sitting here on top of the world and none of the people you started with are here with you, they've all been kicked out your life, or they all think you're a snake, or you did a lot of people greasy. Dude, you're not happy. You're surrounded by a bunch of yes men that just tell you whatever you want to hear. That's not happiness. You're just living in ignorant bliss, and eventually that world comes crashing down on you. Depression sinks in. You realize that people aren't there because of the person you love. We were laughing earlier. No disrespect to any old rock and roll stars, but we were laughing because somebody was saying that Mick Jagger had impregnated like a 20-year-old Brazilian model, and they were like, what if he was like the manager at Nando's? Do you think she would have fucked him? Like, look at her. Come on, dude. Let's be honest with ourselves. People gravitate to money and fame and wealth, and that because the world is full of sycophants. So And I think government trains people to be like that rather than to think freely, which is maybe why they don't want to fund education. They don't want free thinking people. They don't want people that are willing to say, oh, wait, this is wrong, and then fuck up their $100 million deal. Well, maybe your $100 million deal shouldn't have taken place in the first place. Maybe your $100 million deal is bad for humanity. Maybe the fact that you get tax breaks for having, genetically modified shit in the food that now is signed into law and protected by Obama with the so-called Monsanto Act, maybe that's just bad for humanity. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. If you guys go to the supermarket, you have a right to know what the hell is in the food you have. You're a consumer. That's part of the quote-unquote free market enterprise. You have the ability to dictate the market with your choices. Now, if you're being kept ignorant by a government in collusion with these corporations, that's a violation of the tenets of democracy. Imagine, brother, you go to the store and there's two types of cereal. One of them says, this is, with no genetically modified. The other one says, some ingredients in the food have been known to cause cancer in laboratory animals. Which one you gonna buy for your little girl and your boy? I mean, that's a no-brainer, my dude. But they don't see it that way. They see it as, oh, well, you're gonna, you're slandering the food company and the product. Hey, man, it's not slander if it's true. Why? If you're so proud of your brand, how come you're not willing to label it? So proud of your product, how come you don't eat it? How come your kids ain't eating that shit? That's the funniest shit. When all them people that own all those genetically modified companies, you find out that their kids is on some organic vegan diet. Fucking slobs.
I'm American, but I've been over here for 10 years, and when we get Americans coming through the studio, I always want to ask, what's the mood and what's the tone like in America right now? I mean, you talk about a bunch of things that are very frustrating to you, and then we just get this Snowden thing that dropped on us. And right. And what's your mood in America too? I mean, do you get to a point where
no, people are just cynical. They're cynical about everything. Look, whatever liberal fan base Mr. Obama started out with, he's lost a lot of them. He's in danger of losing a lot of the Hispanic vote, and trust me, when they leave the Democratic Party, they will leave in droves because they have a lot of social conservatives in the Latino community. The only thing is that I think the Republicans have been just saying some of the ugliest and most hate-filled speech about, Latino people in general and about Latin American immigrants. And they're going to come back immediately when they hear something like this and say, no, it's the Democrats that are the real. It's so funny for me to hear them talk like a pack of fat hypocrites when they say, oh, we need to curb all of the quote-unquote illegals in the country. And I'm just like, yo, dude, did you have orange juice for breakfast? Because if you did, that makes you a hypocrite. Who do you think picked that? Some lily white dude in a suit? No,
the whole American economy relies on these illegal immigrant jobs. Well, it wouldn't function otherwise.
Well, look, undocumented workers, as I choose to call them, are specifically targeted by both sides because they're the easiest target. And that's sad to me. They're not going after these billion-dollar corporations that are hardly paying taxes and then using these people as damn near slave labor because that would be politically unwise. Then those people wouldn't donate to their campaign funds. So they're just going after the weakest link. And most of these people are better law-abiding citizens. They're better Christians. They're people that are very family-oriented. They don't shove their elders in a fucking nursing home and forget about them when they're old. They say, hey, no, abuelita, she's going to live with us now. We're going to take care of her. Oh, what, grandma has diapers? Well, guess what? Who the fuck changed your diapers when you was a kid? You can't change your diapers? Go fuck yourself, dude, you ungrateful son of a bitch. And remember, once a man, twice a baby.
What does that mean?
Once a man, twice a baby. You came into this world helpless and powerless. You're going to be a man someday. And then someday you're going to grow so old that you're going to be helpless. Imagine, even if you die at 50 of cancer, you living like a baby for those last, few months where you got cancer. Somebody got to feed you. Somebody got to dress you. Somebody got to take care of you. You depend on other people. That's what it means.
You weren't born in America. Do you consider yourself an immigrant, or do you consider yourself an American?
I definitely am an immigrant and an American. I think America was founded by immigrants. All the white people ain't come through Ellis Island. Them niggas just came, popped off in the ship and said, hey, man, I don't want to be here no more. A bunch of religious fanatics that think oral sex is a sin. You know what I mean? Fuck this place. I'm out of here. Puritans, people getting burned at the stake. that it came over here, and then of course, you know, people went insane. They had that Puritan craze out here too.
Yeah, they didn't want the Puritans here. They were like,
right.
"Fuck outta
But
here."
that's the whole point. I think that the insane part of it is that, you know, there's this idea of who's a real American and a nativist, where the so-called undocumented workers that people call illegal human beings, they're actually people who have lived there for thousands of years. You know, they were American before there was an America.
Yeah.
They lived on that entire area.
California used to be part of Mexico.
But that's not the point. It's not even part of Mexico. There used to be so many individual Native American tribes genocided by this government that still some of them exist, and these people never had an allegiance to the Mexican state. The Mexican government had no authority over them. They were a completely autonomous state to themselves. So how can you cede territory that doesn't belong to you? In the same way, we had this during the Revolutionary War between Britain and America. Britain, why the fuck are you giving Ohio to America? That shit was never yours in the first place. You didn't own it. They would just belong to your allies, to your Native American allies when you came in. Even with the Israel situation, you signed a Balfour Declaration in 1914. What the fuck right do you have to give Palestine to anybody else? That's not yours. You just happen to be there because you killed a lot of people and you took it from someone else. So you're not saying, it's not that might makes right. It's just that might makes right now. So that's kind of the sentiment. I think people are very cynical of anything that has to do with government. I think it's almost like when the Snowden thing happened, to address that question head on, the people kind of expected it.
Yeah.
And you found individuals that you thought would be the most liberal individuals in the world. Oh my God, this is an affront to democracy. You have people like Al Franken, who, you know, came on as some darling of the left, who's now justifying it. Franken, you're a fraud, dude. And Obama's up there saying the government's not listening to your phone. Yes, they are. They're listening to your phone calls. It's an interesting truth. You know, the average American citizen probably breaks 2 laws every day, but they only choose to enforce it on the people that are critics of the government. They find critics of the government as suspicious when aren't the people who are taking the most advantage of government and robbing are blind, those people that pledge to love America more than everybody else. Those are the real pimps and hustlers. That you should be investigating those people, but you're not. You're doing stop and frisk on young black and Latino males. You didn't stop and frisk any Wall Street bankers. You're not going into their emails and hacking all their shit to find out where they dumped all the money from American taxpayers who are now left homeless in the street because of that housing crisis, a crisis that extended itself to here in England as well. And I think that, you know, people genuinely see that as disingenuous. You know, there are more hate groups that have arisen. You know, you have people like that with the EDL or the BNP here, where, you know, you have a small fringe group of people that get a lot of media attention because they talk loud and they say stupid things. But then look at the reality of it is, if you want the quote-unquote foreigners out, then why don't you get the fuck out of their country? Why don't you stop? If you don't want the influx of quote-unquote foreigners, then how come you want to control their countries and control their resources? If you don't want them physically here, give them back their diamonds, give them back their oil, give them back all the food, natural resources that you take from them. Oh, and another thing, you're not scared of our women. You love bringing them here, huh? You love taking advantage of that, but you just don't want the men here. That's the problem, too.
Is the government surveilling you, do you think?
If they are, you know,
Do they ever fuck with you?
watching me jerk off. What are you people do? You're a sick fuck out there if you're watching me. All right, that's what you're doing. You're watching me jerk off, huh? You're watching me take a shit. Is that what this is about? Probably. But it's just, it's so pathetic. I mean, I've definitely been harassed though, brother. You know, I've had my father audited by the IRS, and I'm just like, yo, man. Seriously, my father, what the hell did he do? They thought I was hiding money. They have accused me of being a drug dealer, all kinds of ridiculous things, trying to throw charges at me, having the feds harass me, Homeland Security showing up at my house. Come on, man, I don't get fazed by that. I don't buckle. Why? Because I know I'm not riding dirty. You're going to have to plant something on me, and then the whole world's going to know that you planted it on me. You know, there was a case where the government brought up charges on a kid called Cameron D'Ambrosio, and they said, you know, you're making terroristic threats because he made a song saying he didn't believe the London bombings the Boston bombings was real, and he didn't trust the president. He said, fuck Obama or something like that. And I was like, really? You gonna bring him on trial? I said, yo, why don't you put me on trial? Let's have a conversation on record, and let me question the people who are in government who are accusing me of something, because I would love to have that conversation, but I don't really think you're really built for that. I think you like going after caged deers, and there's no honor in that for me. You don't want a real brawl, just like this country. This country don't want a real fight. The UK don't want a real fucking fight. Yeah, you're gonna go, stick your nose into Syria, stick your nose into Iraq and Afghanistan. You don't want a real fight. In other words, you don't want to tussle with Russia. You don't want to tussle with China. And now some conservative idiots watching this be like, oh well, they would just nuke us. That's the point, dude. You don't have the opportunity to just beat somebody up with a weapon when they're unarmed. Another worthy foe vanquished in Panama, the U.S. has. When you haven't won a war since World War II. You didn't win in Vietnam, didn't win in Korea. You had to call a draw because them Chinese brought them boys down. So a lot of people died, unfortunately. Then we didn't win in Iraq. We're not winning in Afghanistan. So where are we winning? What are we doing? And I think that goes directly to the question you asked before, that it's not, the empires and governments don't fall apart when they start losing wars. They fall apart when the people no longer believe in them.
What do you tell kids today? Do you tell them to vote, not to vote? You're obviously a student of history. Do you tell them to read? I mean, it's frustrating.
Well, I tell kids, especially I used to do a prison program, and I told inner city youth, I would tell them, listen, as long as, it's a famous Malcolm X quote, as long as you can be convinced you never did anything, you can never do anything. A lot of these young Black and Latino people, they think that their history starts at the bottom of a boat in 1622, and it doesn't. Because we're not talking about Black history when we talk about Mesopotamia, Sumeria, and Egypt. That's not Black history. That's human history. That's the difference. And I think that just so we don't make it, completely centered around something like that, I think it's also important to notice the style of government that exists. And I try to impart this knowledge to young people as well, to say, hey, listen, Europeans have a white indigenous background as well, in terms of Celts and Picts and stuff and you can see examples of that throughout the Middle Ages, where feudal governments have come and taken people over and forcibly converted them to Catholicism. But before the feudal system, people had tribal leaders. They respected the land. They said, we're not going to take advantage of this. We can't just hunt an animal into extinction. That's not the way the earth works. The earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth. And I think that the European monarchies destroyed that. You had white people that were living the way Native Americans did, and they had a profound respect. I'm not saying all of them, but there were definitely a lot of tribes that did do that out here. And their sense and their ability to connect with nature was what had kept them alive for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. So when we get away from that, and when kids are only fed and spoon-fed lies about where they come from and who they really are, then you can't really expect them to walk into a classroom and give a shit about anything. They think I'm the children of slaves. I'm a real nigga. That's all I'm a nigga. It's just like, yo, dude, but you have a reality that goes beyond that. You understand that? And I think that that's been one of the most powerful things we've been able to do. To show kids, for example, we've been telling, there's been such thing as an African Pope, an African Emperor of Rome. And people would be like, wait, you kidding me? Oh, okay. See, you need to understand something. The early Greeks and Romans didn't have the cancer of racism to the same degree that some of their ancestors had today. They respected talent. The same way, the U.S. government, they respect that. Can Obama put a happy face on what Bush was doing before? Can he deport more people? Yes, he'll deport more people than Bush did. Can he go to war even more? Yes, and on top of that, they'll give that motherfucker a Nobel Prize for sending mercenaries in. He can do that. We respect talent. Can the Black dude do it? All right, bring him in then. Cool. Do it. Run the empire for us. That's essentially what they're doing now. So I guess we've come full circle to the point where it's, okay, who cares what the color is as long as we're making this money.
Did you have hope in 08 when I voted for Obama? But did you have real hope in 08, or were you just like, let's see how this plays out?
I've always been a hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And I definitely hoped for the best and I prepared for the worst. I wasn't caught off guard. I think that, I always say that, I don't really expect too much, so I'm hardly ever disappointed. So it's not like I was
government or in general.
Well, I mean in general. So it's not like I can trust people to be who that character is. That's as much as I can trust anybody. If I don't know you, I can't trust you. But if I know you, I know what your character is. And when he came on board as a corporate lawyer, and then was saying, "Oh, I'm a corporate lawyer and I've been an activist and blah blah blah," I think his presidency to me speaks volumes about the privatization of education. Because if he had gone to a community college somewhere in New York or Boston, then I don't know if he'd be president of the United States. He went to Harvard specifically, and you remember when he was running, they said he had no accolades. You've been senator for 2 years. Before that, you were a state senator. You didn't do nothing. You have no achievements. And they said, oh, he was the editor of the Harvard Law Review. He ran on that, but it was one of the damn points of his campaign. I'm the fucking Harvard Law Review. Yeah, that's a lot different than saying, oh yeah, I run a school, no disrespect, but I run a school paper at a city college or at a community college out of nowhere. That's one difference. Now, if you're sending your children to private school and you're putting them there not just for the education, for the smaller class size, but also for the connects. Because you're going to be going to school, if you send them to school with kids that are parents of millionaires, billionaires, they're starting a business, they're looking for ideas, so they have fresh faces in there that say, oh man, maybe you don't come from money, but you're smart. We need you to be a part of this. We need you to help run, to be the engine that turns the machine. And for that, you can get a slice and you can live a little bit of a life. That's what people are trying to do. The only problem is that if you live like that and you say, okay, my kid doesn't go to public school, fuck that. I don't care about those kids. What does it need to matter to me? Okay, well fine. When one of them kids that couldn't find a job and has no future, after going to jail and can't get hired from nowhere, decides to carjack your rich little son and blow his fucking brains out, don't think that you didn't have a hand to do with that. Oh, that's ignorant technique. Really? Well, it's like blackjack, Put a card up, put another card up, put another card up, put another. Now the dealer got to go 4 cards, right? You took away some of them choices that he potentially could have had by draining that budget, by ripping it to pieces. I'm not saying that his life would have been perfect if you had done that. I'm not saying that individual, whether white, black, brown, red, anything, Asian, I'm not saying that his life would have been perfect, but if the state or if the school system in any way, shape, or form was even a smidgen more responsible, this child would have had an infinite amount more of choices and ideas that I see, And I only say that because when I look at people, I try to see the best in them, even if they show me the worst. I see somebody writing graffiti on a wall, people call him a vandal. I think, wow, that guy could be a fucking artist. Look at this is art, Maybe you're doing it on the wall, but if you had canvas, I know you could be the fucking man with this. All right, you got people that are out there selling drugs. You're a fucking entrepreneur, dude. You're managing a business. You could be an accountant. You know what I mean? You got to count money. But if you were working for Pfizer and you were selling fucking Viagra to niggas, they would have given you employee of the month. But you out here selling pills and Oxycontin that you stole from somewhere. You're going to jail. I think that those are things that really strike me, because when I look at those lost opportunities, I see a lot of wasted talent out there. And all we're doing is feeding a prison industrial complex rather than actually addressing the struggles and strikes of the people.
You mentioned prison earlier, and you spent some time in jail when you were a youth, right? Did you find any net positives from that, or was it just negative, or would you rather that didn't happen to you?
No, I mean, look, dude, it's all a learning experience. I think that I came out of that situation a better man. It was definitely tough in terms of not so much. See, because people have all these illusions about prison. I mean, oh my God, everyone's trying to fuck you all day, and people are fighting in the middle of thing with makeshift spears. Like, no, come on, dude, seriously. I from about 20 to 21, I spent a year, I did a bullet there. So, pretty much when I went there, I came out of that experience as a man in every respect, and also with a real understanding of what drug addiction does to people, because there were so many people in there that were just drug addicts. They weren't, their crime was having a fucking disease, my brother, a goddamn disease. They were stealing because they were hooked on crack or cocaine, or they were hooked on heroin. People who had committed violent crimes because they were under the influence of something, they probably wouldn't have done it after that. Now, are some people genuinely wicked characters that I met in there? Yeah, yo, I understood the difference. I thought I was bad, but when I came out of the experience, I realized I wasn't evil. You know what I mean? Like that was something that helped me to define myself and say, listen, I don't need to live my life and try to be, bottom line. These people are wicked. You raped a deaf girl and you bashed her head in with a brick. You're an evil individual. When people say, oh, prison shouldn't exist, I always say, hey, listen, let's be a realist. There's some people I don't ever want to live next door to, because I'm gonna end up killing you if you look at my kids wrong. I don't care. I will shoot you wherever I see if you touch my child. That's it. And I think that, when I examine prison also, one of the things that I brought out of it was, I rap about some aspects of it, but I don't use it in my music in any way, shape, or form to brag, because it's not like I'm sitting here. Me going to prison doesn't give me the right to brag about it. It gives me the responsibility to tell young people of every background that that's not a rite of passage. That doesn't make you a tough guy. You know what I mean? That's just slavery. That's really all it is. And to extend that, when you go to the ghetto and you go to those communities, you tell people straight up, all right, let's have an honest conversation. You don't live in the hood because you tough. Nigga, you live in the hood because your parents are poor. That's the only reason you live here. If they had money, they wouldn't keep your ass here. They would have you in a nice house somewhere in the fucking countryside. That's where you'd be. Gangsters, they send their kids to private school. They don't want to say, hey, you know what I'm really going to do to help, little Ty or little Fernando get right, or little Joe Scott get right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have them living in a crack house, because that'll make them tough. That'll make them understand the world. No, I want to send them to Eton. I want to send him to Oxford. That's where you want your fucking kid to go, right? So he can run a legitimate business, so he doesn't end up having the life that you had. That's the difference. That's what people don't get about the game. They hustling backwards.
Wow, that's some serious
Do
knowledge.
you feel like, as an artist, then it's your responsibility? Because a lot of artists do propagate the image of what you're talking about, that going to prison is cool, or being from a particular environment is cool. And I mean, growing up myself, you kind of use these things to as merits, you know what I mean? That's what you use to give yourself credential, because if someone went to prison, then no one wants to mess with them anymore, you know what I mean? Or if you live in the hood, it gives you a certain status. When you're in school, when the rich kids are saying to you, oh, you can't do this, but they're afraid of you because you're from a particular background. So as an artist, is that your overriding objective?
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on what kind of rich kid you are, what kind of man your father has decided to raise you to be. If you're a rich kid whose dad doesn't give a fuck about you and he's never around, then if you got a problem at school, of course some bully's gonna be beating the shit out of you. But if your father's a gangster and he owns Blackwater or some shit, then he gonna lend you some of his men, come to school the next day and beat the fuck out of them niggas that was bothering you. I'm just saying that it really matters how much you put into it in terms of parenting when you're talking about dealing with children a lot too. Because you'll see, especially with young people that want to rap about certain things. Like, we had this discussion yesterday at this panel over we watched this movie 1 Mile Away about the gangs in Birmingham. It was called
1 Day or 1 Mile Away?
1 Mile Away.
Oh, no, I don't think I've seen it.
It's a great documentary, but it was interesting because we were discussing how in those particular scenarios, when you really see children going through stuff like that, you could teach anything to them with love, but the only thing you can teach them with hate is how to hate other people. And if they don't have some kind of idea that their life can be bigger than that their story is stronger, that their history is, that their roots are deeper, that they come from somewhere, that they have a chance to be something, that when you really do put in work and build a business, that there can be visible residuals from that. Don't you want to own your home one day, brother? Don't you want to see your kids have, a better life than you did growing up? Isn't that the point of all this? Or are we here just to glorify ourselves? The other thing is this. I tell them young people, brother, just like you asked, I don't care what they rhyme about. I don't care what they talk about in them prison program. I tell her that all day. Look, dude, you want to rap about selling crack? That's fine. I tell the young brother, just make it interesting for me. Don't tell me the same story that Jay-Z or one of these other niggas said, because I've heard that story already. Tell me a different story. Tell me what it's like to sell crack to a pregnant woman. I want to hear that story. I want to hear you go home and tell me what that's like. I want to hear you tell me what it's like to buy, $60,000 worth of heroin on consignment and lose the shipment and have them motherfuckers after you, because you're gonna die and they're gonna kill your family too. Tell me what it's like to sell the drugs that you grew up watching your parents use, because 9 times out of 10 the people that I knew that sold drugs, their parents are drug addicts. That's how they learned to cut cocaine or shape an onion or fucking, Ron or something like that. They knew it because they had seen people grow up abusing that. Tell me that story. That's the one I want to hear. Just be honest with people, because that's really what we're trying to do in terms of, or what I'm trying to do in terms of the artistry. I'm just trying to get the honesty out of people. Yes, we're all flawed human beings. Yeah, we all sin. We all do stupid things, but we don't have to do it in such a destructive way that we leave a trail of broken lives everywhere we go. Because then, we're just causing our own extinction.
So when it comes to that as your responsibility as an artist, to bring that honesty out, is there ever a conflict for you between the entertainment aspect and the aspect of being, because essentially most kids want to listen to music for the entertainment value, you know what I mean? And do you feel it's difficult to maintain that while at the same time projecting honesty with them?
I think the difference is that the music that I have relies on a lot of concepts. So that is like a storytelling premise.
Oh, okay.
That's the ability to go to circumvent that argument that you're talking about and say, well, I can get straight to the child's mind, because now, for example, I did a song, Dance with the Devil,
That's
about rape and murder.
That's the first song I heard, and that was...
a lot of people that never heard of me, and probably they were like, oh, well, this rap is about something. We're not talking about just random shit. Oh, wait a minute, these niggas killed, Shorty's mom. Like, that's insane. But at the same time, it's like that is so real, and it became an urban legend because it just kept happening. And I reminded people, it's not that it kept happening, but like it would be a bunch of cats in Newark where it happened with somebody's cousin, or something would happen in LA, or it even happened out here in London where somebody was raped and it turned out to be the guy's stepmother or sister or something like that. And they call it the Dance with the Devil murder. And then someone contacted me like, yo, do you see that your story, and someone was silly enough, they called me, oh, you're a prophet. I'm like, no, I'm not a prophet. This isn't happening because I made a song about it. This has always been happening. And I made a song about something that continues to happen. The rape of your own people, the self-destruction that you live in a society where you begin to consume yourself. And I think by doing that, it's not so much a conflict, but I take that conflict and I use it to my advantage to say, okay, you know what? If a giant, block is swinging at me, then I'm not going to stand in front of the block, but I'm going to get by the side of the block and kind of nudge it in the direction that I needed to go in. So, God forbid, if you coming up behind me, you're going to get hit by that motherfucking block. I'm just saying that I think they're not always in conflict with one another, but I think that, what you said is true. If you're talking about a commercial corporate entity, then those things become a conflict at all, because then you're sponsored by all these people that have no interest in seeing our community do anything. They just want to sell, sugar and water to us. They want to sell like a cereal with a toy in it to us, or or we're gonna have hip hop hamburgers or something. That's what they think. They just see it as another thing to prostitute.
Well, what's the current state of hip hop, and what do you like and what do you not like?
Well, the current state of hip hop is obviously that, we're dealing with a generation that grew up in cities that are a lot less violent. So there's a lot less of the violent talk that used to exist before. That doesn't make it softer, it makes it more concept driven. So that's a perfect venue for me to exist, because a lot of the stuff that I have is conceptual. So it's not so much that I mind it. And I can't tell people how to dress. People always ask me, how do you feel about people wearing skinny jeans or something? And I said, listen, when you grow up, you wear clothes that fit. That's just how it is, When you're a kid, you just don't wear shit that you don't want to wear shit that fits. You don't want to fit in. So some people wearing baggy ass clothes. I don't want to fit in. Now niggas is wearing some old skin tight shit that cuts off your circulation. You just don't want to fit in. I understand. I see the rebelliousness. You go from being completely dependent, on a parent or a grandparent to being completely independent, that's going to breed conflict no matter what within you, within the system. But, you know, I think it's good to see so many people or younger people that are going independent now. That's one thing I like about hip hop. I see a lot of independent cats that are saying, no, I want to own my masters. I want to own my publishing. You know, I don't want to get 13 cents a record. I want, you know, $5 to $7 a record. That's how I want to roll. And if you can't do that for me, then get the fuck out of here because I can do it myself.
Very empowering that way.
Yeah.
What's next for you? I mean, what's the next goal for Immortal, like a year or 2 years? Is it to get bigger, or is it not?
No, I finally have to release this album I've been holding on to for it's like 5 years. It's called The Middle Passage.
Yeah.
And I've been working on it here and there. I get 1 or 2 songs done. I had to go revamp a couple of them and change the samples into interpolation just because I didn't want to get caught up with paying some greedy label, some shit. So it's been a process. Shout out to the engineer, Southpaw, my brother, for a long time, doing it real big. And me and him have to get together to work on a bunch of other stuff that has come through the label, like other releases. My brother Akir is coming out with a record called The Plan. My homie Hassan Salam, Life in Black and White, is coming out. This other signee that we have called Constant Flow, or CF, representing Jersey, he's coming out. The Circle, which are friends of mine from a while ago, they're gonna bring some heat. So I have a bunch of releases coming out on the label that'll hopefully, you know, garner some more attention for the actual company and bring us back into the fold. Not that we ever left, but, you know, bring back to the fold the dynamic of New York underground. But in terms of me, I'm out here promoting the DVD, which features Ice-T and KRS-One, Chuck
This is your
D,
documentary, right? Okay.
Chuck D, Woody Harrelson, just a lot of people that have been like cool and friendly enough to share their advice with me about the journey that I decided to take. Dr. Cornell West, just a ton of people that have been, you know, very helpful in terms of my struggle. And, you know, we traveled to a lot of places. We traveled to Colombia, where we went to that institution I was telling you about earlier. We went to Afghanistan, built the orphanage with the human rights organization.
Is that the Green Light Project?
Yeah, but it was done with a human rights organization called OMAID International. For those of you who are interested in donating out there, it's OMEID.org. And, you know, I definitely, you know, want to promote that as much as I can. But also, I really do have to finish up that record. Like, after this tour is over, I have tomorrow I'll be in Cardiff, and then Oslo, then Copenhagen, and then Aarhus. And then after that, literally, I'm going back to NY. I'm doing a like Rock the Bells party or something like that they have. So I'm gonna show up there with like 400 people. And then after that, I'll get back in the studio and try to finish up the Middle Passage and get this shit done. And I'm gonna hit them real fucking hard.
Okay. What, with touring on that, or just with releasing that?
With releasing that, and I'll definitely come back and do another tour. I mean, because I've been here twice in the past year, I'll probably save England for last, England and Ireland for last. But I'm gonna enjoy the shit out of myself when I do come back here. And I mean, I always come back to London every, you know, few months to close some kind of business deal or catch up with friends or work on stuff. So I love it out here. I don't know if I'm ready for a crib, but maybe I'll rent a flat or something like that for something.
When it's sunny, it's the bomb. When it's not, it's trying sometimes, you know.
I'm a New Yorker, yo. You know what I mean? We're used to the rain. I don't care, yo. But it's humid weather, so I don't suffer in this heat, and I won't suffer in the cold. You know, I'll be good no matter what.
Human weather. And will you tour in the States as well?
Yeah. I'll probably go on a tour in September.
Okay. And hit East Coast, West Coast, or hit everything in between?
East Coast, West Coast, and pretty much everything in between.
Okay.
But that's still in the works.
Okay.
I gotta see those numbers. They gotta show me those motherfucking numbers. That's what they gotta show me.
All right, fair enough. I gotta ask you a very London Real question before we wrap up, and it's one I ask almost every guest. And I was wondering if you could pick up the phone and make a phone call to the 20-year-old Immortal Technique, and if you could give him some advice, what would you tell him? And it can't be just keep doing what you're doing.
No, put all your money in Apple stock.
Businessman.
Yo, dude, no, not just that. I mean, I don't know, dude. That's crazy because I mean, I would do a whole lot of stuff if I could go in the past. I would tell him about 9/11, tell him to stop it somehow. You know what I mean? Tell him the repercussions that will happen because of it. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'd save my cousin's life. I do a whole lot of shit. Wow. Yeah. How long is that conversation that I get to have?
Yeah. As a man, if you just had to give him a few words of wisdom, is there anything that springs to mind? Not that you would have listened at 20, but
yeah, I definitely couldn't have said it was me, because then me wouldn't have believed it. I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, you ain't me, nigga. I'd have to say something to him that's so personal about us, so he would have got it. And it'd be like, yo, do you remember that time that you robbed them niggas and you was running away and you threw your bag and you jumped, and they'd be like, oh, you do know me, homie, because I was alone when that shit happened. And nah, but in all truth, all jokes aside, I would tell him that I would tell him that no matter what he's going through, that this too shall pass. No matter what kind of shit you're going through, no matter what the fuck life throws at you, just keep pushing through. Wherever you end up, you're still gonna be able to make an impact. It don't matter if you end up being a famous rapper on a label, or if you end up, running for Congress, or you end up being a soldier, or you end up doing whatever it is, But at the same time, I was incarcerated when I was 20, so I didn't even know what kind of life I would have when I got out. I would definitely tell him certain things. I would tell him the path that I took. I would tell him definitely to get a job, go work. But it's not fair, because I really would tell him about that Apple shit. I would totally tell him all the stocks.
And on that same note, I mean, what advice do you give to the 20-year-old out here that's listening to us that maybe wants to grow up one day and be like you? What do you tell them?
Get ready to not sleep. You got to listen. Success is not measured by what you have; it's measured by what you had to sacrifice in order to get to where you are. That's what it is. That's what I would tell them. You want something, be willing to cut your hand off for it. You got to bleed for that. That's really your dream. You can't expect just to pray and have it fall out the sky. And everybody's career is littered with the corpses of other people's career. That's the path of some people's ascension to glory. There's certain lines of work where you almost can't get ahead without chopping somebody down. That's the unfortunate circumstance of a lot of types of employment. But I would tell people, if that's not how you want to live and you want to be able to sleep at night, find something to do that makes you happy. There's so few people in this world, my father told me, that do things for a living that make them happy. I would just tell the young people out there, it don't matter if you want to be involved in hip hop or you want to be a rapper. Realize I started out as a graffiti writer. I wasn't even an MC. Fuck that. Other niggas was rhyming. I was up there painting the wall. I ended up doing this. They might come into the game as a rapper and then end up being a famous producer or an incredible engineer or a videographer or a documentary filmmaker. They might do independent media, such as yourself, where they have their own. You here, you living well. This shit look nice. It's like, come on, man. You don't have to be, you don't have to be Jay-Z or Justin Timberlake in your mind to be successful. Success is being able to take care of your parents rather than them taking care of you. That's successful. There you go. You want to be able to pay your kids' bills. You want to be able to pay for food for your family. You want to be able to sustain yourself and have something to pass down to people. That makes you successful, not some overblown, pathetic idea of wealth that just feeds your ego. That don't feed your kids.
Indeed. Speaking of parents, Father's Day was yesterday. Is that? Do you get to call your dad? Is he still around?
I spoke to your father. Yeah, I spoke to my father. We had a good chat. He's very serious, man.
Is he?
What does he think of what your whole ethos and what you represent? I mean, is he a fan of hip hop music?
Nah, my father's more of a jazz head.
Oh, okay.
I grew up listening to a lot of jazz, Coltrane, Chick Corea, stuff like that, Miles Davis, whatever it may be. And, he likes music, and he definitely, obviously he don't agree with necessarily the language that I use or some of the extreme examples, but, he's pleased with me that I'm doing something that I love for a living, because that's what he said. He said, 99% of the people out there do something that they hate, but they have to do You know, you think somebody want to be a cop in New York and get spit on and get harassed and always have people, you know, trying to get at you and to the point where you become cynical and abusive to the public yourself? Do you think people like that? No, but they know that, damn, I'm going to sign up with the city and I'm going to have the best medical and dental program that you motherfuckers have ever seen. I get to have carte blanche when I drive around. Ain't nobody going to arrest me. If you arrest my child for anything, I'm the first to know, damn near before anybody else. You know, it's like people make a certain sacrifice for the jobs that they have. You think people like cleaning up the trash here in London? No, but they do it because, goddamn it, those kids got to eat. And at the same time, you know, don't lose that dream. Even if you a trash man, even if you something else, who gives a fuck, dude? You like to paint? You making money? Buy yourself a fucking canvas. Do something with it. Don't lose that artistic side of yourself. Don't give that up just because you decided to conform in life. Always keep that, because it can be used to ennoble your children, to ennoble your perspective. It can give you a wider array of ideas to choose from when you decide what you're going to dedicate, you know, the education of your children to.
That's powerful. You mentioned your father. My dad's 70, and I can FaceTime him and call him in California and talk to him. And I just sometimes just think, how fucking lucky am I, you know? And that someday I won't be able to do that, but now I can talk to him and just have this like massive personal interaction with him and get his advice and get his thoughts. And yeah, I really cherish that much more than I used to. God bless him as I get older. Immortal, thank you so much for coming by. It's been a real pleasure having you here.
If the people want to get in contact with me, they can do that. Facebook /Tech Immortal. They could get at me on Twitter /Immortal Tech, or they could come see me at viperrecords.com. I appreciate all the love and support. The Middle Passage coming out soon. Shout to the Rebel Arms, London, we here. Peace.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much, Sully. Thanks for being here. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please subscribe. And if you want to see our faces, we're on YouTube channel, London Real. And that's it. We're out of here. Peace, guys.
I left, I basically came down here when I left my mum's place when I was 17. It was the first time. I stayed down for 2 years and basically just couch surfed and kind of fannied about for a couple of years and had a really good time.
That's like 70s, 75, 76.
Yeah, maybe a wee bit later, 77, 78.
Okay.
Then I came back down.